How important is winning over the family if you want to win battles in recruiting?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, your host, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So Miami Hurricanes fans have been talking a lot for the past 12 hours or so about what the mother of five-star defensive end Colin Simmons out of Duncanville, Texas, what his mother had to say about Jason Taylor and Miami. She was interviewed by Steve Wiltfong from 24/7 Sports, and she said, my takeaway, of course, Jason Taylor is an amazing coach. If anything, he'd be the one coach I'd love for Colin to be coached by. Now, for what it's worth, I don't want anyone to think that Miami is the only school that Colin Simmons' mother spoke glowingly about, because I read her comments about Texas as well, which is one of the favorites for him. She had a lot of nice things to say about Texas. He's been trending between Texas and LSU, but we all know winning over families is important. And if the mother of Colin Simmons feels like Jason Taylor might be the best coach for him, we'll see how much influence something like that can have. And let's bring on an expert in recruiting. This man has been covering high school football for a very long time. He is our boy Blue, Larry Blustein, South Florida High School Sports and 560 WQAM. Good morning, Blue. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Alex, for having us. Appreciate it as always.
You know, Blue, whenever I bring up, the influence of moms and families in recruiting, Miami fans always remember about a decade ago, Alex Collins' mom, the five-star running back, where he picked Arkansas and she ran away with his national letter of intent. She wanted him to come to Miami, not Arkansas. He did end up signing with Arkansas. I from what I've heard, the family of Justin Scott had something to do with why he picked Ohio State, staying in the Midwest versus coming to Miami. So families can definitely have an influence in this process, Blue. Has that been your experience? Because you've been covering high school players and recruiting for longer than most of us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It definitely has an influence. And parents, parents are always, and you got to remember, too, the process now is probably more magnified because everything's on social media and you get more than your 15 minutes of fame now. So kids, there's some kids that, want to be more in the spotlight. So all they have to do, all the marquee kid has to do is call up one of the writers from any of these On3 or 24/7 or Rivals and say something to them. And then all of a sudden it's all over the internet for the world to see. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to it. The dramatics are a little bit nuts, when a mother will step in and walk away. I guess, because here's the thing, too. And I deal with a lot of parents. Most of the parents don't even know the recruiting process. They just think it's kind of a cut and dry type of thing. They don't realize that a lot of these college coaches spend months, if not years, laying down the foundation of a relationship. And, that's why when somebody will be committed to one school for a year and then back out, you think, wow, that's, they already, the assistant coach and the position coach and the head coach already know their family. They know everybody who's, involved with the situation. So, yeah, that kind of is a surprise. But families do have a big influence these days. And it's one of those things that, it's part of the process. And more so with some families than others.
Yeah, and, of course, another big part of that story is Jason Taylor, that Simmons' mother spoke so highly of JT. And listen, he's a first-time defensive line coach, so he doesn't have like an actual college football resume. The resume is what he did on the field in the NFL and, what he did, coaching high school players at St. Thomas Aquinas. But he's still writing his college resume. But then at the same time, everyone respects JT, and he's putting Miami in a lot of conversations, right? I don't believe Marquise Lightfoot would have verbally committed to Miami if not for the Jason Taylor effect. We'll see if someone like Colin Simmons can be swayed the same way. He's one of the top players, Blue, in this recruiting class, period. 5-star edge out of Duncanville, Texas. And again, if you go by the crystal balls and the trends, most publications have him either at LSU or at Texas, but he's yet to make that decision. What sort of a player is he, Blue? Have you had a chance to scout Colin Simmons?
Yeah, I have. Big time kid, long kid. But if I can speak on the Jason Taylor situation, remember most of these kids never watched him play. I mean, they have YouTube and they can go back and see. But the one thing is all you have to do is look at his resume locally. He made a difference on perhaps the best defensive end in college football today in Dallas Turner from Alabama, a guy who, was at Heritage for 3 years and then went to St. Thomas Aquinas in just that 1 year. And the sole purpose of him going to St. Thomas Aquinas was working with Jason Taylor. Nicholas Benito, a kid who was an All-American basketball player as a 6th, 7th, and 8th grader, probably the number one player in the nation. Then he made the switch to football. He was at university school and then went to St. Thomas. And what he learned in 2-3 years was amazing. Got him to Oklahoma. He's with Denver Broncos in the NFL. So to me, that's the most important part of what Jason Taylor does. His influence as what have you done for me lately? Well, there are 2 kids that I just gave you that everybody knows. All the kids know. And all you have to do is just go back and, into YouTube and watch what Jason Taylor did as an athlete. Now, the parents will relate to him a lot more from that standpoint and say, hey, wait a minute. This cat was one of the best, and he was on Dancing with the Stars. And no, but I mean, that's one of the things that I think that sells. And I'm sure that's one reason why Mario Cristobal made sure that he was part of the staff and not just a consultant, because he can go on the road and, let's face it, this is a different time. Hall of Famers who we used to put on pedestals and say, oh, we can't, touch or talk to these guys, or now, following their passion. And he loves coaching, and he's always loved coaching. And you get a guy like Colin Simmons, and obviously he's a big time kid, big time program. I mean, as you mentioned, Texas and Florida and Alabama and LSU have been in on him. He's a great edge rusher. He's quick off the ball. And like I said, when you're 6'3" and 225, 230 and run extremely well, everybody's going to be after you. And I know that a lot of people have him at LSU or Texas, but just from what his mom said, I think he's really got Miami into consideration because of the fact that the ceiling, he could reach his ceiling, and it's a proven fact that Jason Taylor does with players like that.
That's well said. We're joined here by Larry Blustein, who's an absolute legend. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter at Larry Blustein. We have a lot more to talk about, okay? Because a 4-star safety who was verbally committed to Georgia has decommitted. You might think he's a Miami target. He might not be. We're going to discuss Jalen Hayward, and I want to get Blue's scouting report on JoJo Trader, who, of course, he covered down here in South Florida has covered as a high school player. He's got another year of high school football left. Want to get Joe's scouting report, Blue's scouting report, I should say, on Chris Wheatley-Humphrey and a few others, because when we got a man with a wealth of knowledge like Larry Blustein, we got to pick that brain a little bit. So you want to keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. Guys, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Guys, I've found jobs through LinkedIn Jobs before. You want to add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Then simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. For the everydayers, I encourage you to take your everydayer experience to the next level by joining our exclusive SMS texting service through Subtext. I include the link in the show description below. Get text messages to your phone directly from mine with breaking news, show updates, recruiting updates, one-on-ones, completely free for the first 14 days. Then if you want to opt in, it's $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value there. Just click the link in the show description below. Larry Blustein is with me. So, Blue, I go back to the month of June, and there was definitely some buzz that Miami was in the mix to flip Jalen Hayward, 4-star safety from Rockledge, Florida, out of his verbal commitment to Georgia. I think that talking to some other folks, recruiting analysts, there was a sense that when he committed to Georgia way back, he maybe rushed into that, was still going to keep his recruitment open, take visits. He did take a visit to Miami in June, but it's a weird situation because there have been reports of some kind of a disconnect between Hayward and Miami's staff that came to light on that visit. Miami may not be recruiting him anymore, but Wiltfong from 24/7 did mention Miami as maybe a contender now to land a verbal commitment now that he's decommitted from Georgia. So I don't know exactly what's going on there, but can you speak to Jalen Hayward as a football player? Because we know Miami can definitely use some top flight safeties.
No, I had an opportunity to watch him a couple of times this summer. Good kid, hard worker, covers a lot of ground. Rangy at about 6.5, about 180, 185. I've been close to that program for a while. Their head coach, I used to cover back in the day when he played at Cocoa. He was a quarterback at Cocoa and went to FIU and was a quarterback. And so we've stayed close. Any time that they have prospects, we talk about them. And we've talked about Jalen quite a bit. And, I can't speak on what happened between Miami and him, so I don't really know. I can just tell you as a player, he would like to stay in Florida, and UCF has been mentioned a lot because now I know that people cringe when you mention UCF, but hey, they're going after the same guys Miami are now,
and they're getting a pretty good recruiting class. Blue, it seems like they're getting some guys.
Yeah, well, Stacey Gage is being one of them, and then for the 25 class, Tavion Swint from Kissimmee Osceola. But, so they're in the mix too. This kid's a big-time kid, obviously. If Georgia thought enough of him to, commit him early on. But, I don't know what the deal is. I mean, he's really, really good, and he'd be an asset to Miami's program. But, I don't know what in the process, sometimes everything's so much hearsay because no one's ever going to tell you that, what's going on. And, but you'd think that somebody like Coach Adai would be right in on that, being a guy who used to coach at Georgia and he, people respect him a great deal. But we'll see, he, like I said, he'd be a great asset, but, and I know that Miami fans and FSU and Florida fans, they got to take their ego a little bit and put it back because UCF's here to stay. I mean, they're a Power 5 school, so when they get in the mix, you can't go, oh, I can't believe. You look at their schedule. I mean, they play Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and TCU and Baylor this year. So, and that's what they're going to be playing in and year out. They may not be playing Oklahoma or Texas anymore, but certainly some of the Kansas States and teams like that. So they're easy sell. They're in a great area, if anywhere, I think he would probably look there. And like you said, they've already over the last couple of years, they got the kid Nikai Martinez from Apopka, who was a Power 5 kid. They got Walker, the defensive tackle, who was considered their best recruit ever. So, I think I think the kid would, like I said, would be just an amazing asset to Miami. Great safety kid, like I said, covers a lot of ground. He'll hit you a little bit, and he's got a good football IQ.
I like it. So good endorsement there for Jalen Hayward. Let's stay with defensive backs here, Blue, because I know a player. I don't know when he plans to announce. He might take this to National Signing Day if he wants to, but five-star safety Zaquan Patterson out of Chaminade, Madonna, he's another Miami Gardens Raven, right? Miami's landed a ton of those guys from Rod Mack's program. Ryan Mack, OJ Frederic, JoJo Trader, who we're going to talk about, Vincent Shavers, Chris Wheatley-Humphrey, who we're going to talk about. But, Zaquan Patterson is another one that Miami is very much after. He's one of the top safeties in the class. What do you see when you watch Zaquan Patterson?
Yeah, he's been like this since the 8th grade. I mean, he's a big-time kid. Is grown. I mean, he's a big safety. I mean, he come out there and he'll knock you for a loop. I mean, he's a very physical guy, and his cover skills have improved quite a bit as well. And on St. Tom, on Chaminade, besides him, you have Chris Ewald, who's only going to be a junior this year and committed to Michigan. So to me, Chaminade needs players that are versatile like that. And I think he's shown over the last couple of years that, he's one of the elite kids in the nation, no doubt about it. I think that he has an opportunity, to anywhere he goes, he's going to be an impact. He's going to be, is he a Cam Kinchen's impact? Got the potential to be. Nobody, when Cam came out of Northwestern, everyone was, they were elated. But if you remember when you and I talked, I said, he's more of an impactful safety than Williams is.
Right.
And I felt like that. And the same thing with Zaquan. Zaquan's look at how many high level games he's played in his career, certainly in the state championship every year, had an opportunity to play some of the best teams in the country last year. And this year, definitely he'll show. But yep, if he comes to Miami, another kid that's going to be, just another building block in this zest to be conference champions and eventually get in the national picture.
Let's talk about another Chaminade superstar who has verbally committed to Miami, and that's Josiah JoJo Trader. And I've been itching, Blue, to get your scouting report on Trader ever since he verbally committed to Miami late last week, because when I watch this young man, he makes circus catches look ordinary. I mean, just tremendous job tracking footballs, and he's got that speed and explosiveness. You've watched him up close in person more than I've ever dreamed of watching him. So what do you see in JoJo Trader?
Yeah, different level kid. Different level athlete. Let's go back. If you remember, people don't realize, but look at the freshman year that Monsignor Pace had. They had Josiah Trader and by the way, the number one receiver in the country at both wide receivers. You had Vincent Shavers, you had Armando Posse, you had all these guys on one team. Then he goes to Central for his sophomore year. And if a lot of people remember him as, a kid that caught some balls, but they also remember that he played one defensive play in the entire state championship, and it was a pick that he ran back 93 yards. So this is a kid who's just, he's this year's Francis Mauagoa. He's Miami's big time recruit. He's as good as Miami's recruited at this position a long while. Difference maker from day one. He makes the big catches. He's in there. He's that guy. He's Rambo. He's guys that'll come into the huddle and say, hey, you know what? I could beat this guy. Get it to me. And that's what they've been lacking. But just a great athlete. And a good dude too. That's a good team kid. He'll definitely fit in extremely well on the team. And that's what Miami likes to do too. Remember, they not only get great kids, but because of Mario's experience with dealing with kids who could, who could run a 4.4, but also are not very good in the locker room. You have to weed those kids out because there's, and he's definitely, just a prize recruit, no doubt.
Speaking of receivers and fast receivers, when you mentioned that running a 4.4, you made me think of a guy who's now on Miami's roster who runs a 4.2, and that's Tyler Harrell. who went to Columbus. Now he's a
Yeah,
well-traveled guy,
yeah,
was at Louisville, was at Alabama. Now he's at Miami. Now the thing about Harrell is obviously the yards per catch are, up in the stratosphere. Not like a big volume catch type of guy. But he's at Miami now. He's coming off an injury that he's fully recovered from that cost him most of his year at Bama last year. What kind of a difference can Tyler Harrell make on this roster?
Same type. I mean, remember, he's got experience. He's older. He's been there, done that, played at a high level, played against high-level teams. He comes in here, and he's going to get respected right away because he's been around. The kids will see what he does, how he handles himself. He's more mature than a lot of the kids that Miami has, so they're going to kind of follow his lead, and I think he's going to be just so valuable on and off the field. And that's where people don't realize, he's going to add a spark to what Miami already has from the playing standpoint, but also when you look at a kid like that, you have an opportunity to see what he's going to be from a leadership and a maturity standpoint. And that's really invaluable. And it's the same thing that Miami received by getting Cohen and Lee. I mean, you got two guys right there that have so much experience, not just as a football players, but in life.
Now, I want to get Blue's take on an interesting nugget when we come back about a Miami wide receiver who may have gotten a few reps at defensive back, and you have to wonder if maybe a transition could be made there. Plus, I want Blue's scouting report on Chris Wheatley-Humphrey, the Hellcat, who I think is one of the more underrated players in Miami's class of 2024. You want to keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. To the everydayers, we're going to hit it hard on Thursday and Friday, talking more recruiting. Hopefully Miami can land some more verbal commits in the near future. Larry Blustein is with us today. So, Blue, I was listening to 24/7 sports podcast with Andrew Ivins and Cooper Patania, and when Ivins was talking about Miami, one nugget that he mentioned was, and I was not aware of this until I heard Ivins say it, that apparently – Robbie Washington has gotten a few reps at defensive back. Miami's true freshman receiver. He's gotten some reps at defensive back. Now, Ivins didn't sound like he was saying a position change was imminent or anything like that, so I don't want anyone to jump to conclusions, but that apparently whatever work he's gotten some burn at defensive back, Washington's looked really good there. So you have to wonder, like, if there is, for any reason, Miami decides this is someone who could be a candidate to make that transition. You covered Robbie in high school. Do you feel like he has a skill set that could make him a dynamic defensive back?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, he's one of the better athletes on the team. He's got speed. He's got that football IQ, being around it all of his life with his dad and obviously his brother, who's really shown out. This is a kid that definitely wouldn't be surprising if he did make the move to the defense, especially right now. Miami at the slot positions loaded up, and they got a lot of kids, with Restrepo and Burchard and Ray and guys like that. So I think that they want to get him on the field. See, and that's the thing. So wherever it may be, I'm not going to, say, oh, well, they're wrong, he's never going to make the move, because it's not true. You got a kid like that. And, I always I'm really huge on the fact, Alex, that if you have that Lamborghini, drive it. Don't park it in the garage just because maybe it's raining outside. So, he's big. He's big time kid. And that's the one thing Miami really struck a goal in that class because of the fact that you have versatile players like that.
Yeah, somebody asked me last week, one of our listeners, which of Miami's class of 2024 commits I think are the sleepers. And there are a few of them who I think are sleepers, but one of them to me is Chris Wheatley-Humphrey, the running back out of South Broward. I'm wondering, because, you've watched him a ton in person. I've watched his tape. But when I watch his tape, I'm like, this doesn't look like a 3-star player to me. This looks like a 4-star player, had a good offer list as well. So there are certain players, sometimes you'll see maybe a 5-star player who should be a 4-star, but a lot of times I'll see a 3-star that probably should be a 4-star. Give me your scouting report on Hellcat Chris Wheatley-Humphrey.
Yeah, I got a little cheat sheet here because I covered his dad at South Broward. His dad was a linebacker and a safety, and Rob, his name is Rob, and Rob was a beast. Rob could play and a very athletic kid. Probably could have gone a lot further than he did, but and I've watched his son since he was 8 years old, because obviously Rob would send me clips every freaking week during the season. Hey, check my kid out. So I've kind of watched him probably much longer than anybody else, because his dad, made me privy to getting a lot of the tape. But this is a kid that, you're right. You look at his tape, and I watched him twice last year live. And one of the games, his team lost like 58-20, but he had 273 yards on like 7 carries. I mean, he's so quick. He gets to that second level so fast that it's amazing. And he's a good sized kid. Yeah, he's easily a 4-star. I mean, I'm not into the stars, as you know, but definitely a guy who may be under the radar to some. But to me, I thought he was one of those big time gets, as far as a recruit, because of the fact that what he brings to the table as a running back, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. And, that's the type of kid you want in space. And certainly he's one of those underrated 2024 kids, much the way that Artavius Jones is. So,
yes,
because people don't know much about him either, but I was kind of privy to him as an 8th and 9th grader out of Blustein. First player Miami ever got out of Blustein. So.
I wasn't sure about that. And it's funny. That doesn't surprise me, because when I saw Blustein, Florida, I had no idea what that was. Like when I learned about it because of Artavius.
I have heard that. Yeah. Alex, I've heard that 20 times in the last week. Talking to our friend Vish, he says that, I had to Google it. And because I told him, I says, I think they have a Burger King. And he said, you know what? He says to me, he texted me the other day. He goes, you were right. They do have a Burger King.
Well, and I didn't know Milton before last year when Miami got Emery Williams out of there. But you knew Milton.
Milton is New York City compared to Blustein. I mean, you're Blustein is a stoplight, and if you miss it on the highway, it's just to the west of Tallahassee, but in a different time zone. And certainly, that. And everyone goes, well, they don't play. Yeah, they play teams. I mean, they play Panama City, Rutherford, and they, but then they also play Liberty County and Weewahitchka and Chipley and schools like that. But big time kid, and their coach back in the day, 4 years ago, when he told me, he says, Larry, I'll tell you what. Because I saw him for the first time. They were in the state championship game, I think, his sophomore year. But he said to me, I'll tell you right now, this kid could be the best player we've ever had. He's one of them. He's a smart kid. He's big. He's a worker. He never slacks. He said he's a leader right now at 15 years old. So what is he going to be when he's a senior? So I'll tell you what, Miami got another prize catch. And a lot of people don't even have a clue about it. And if they say they do, they're not. They're not right, because this is a guy that really virtually came out of nowhere from the standpoint of a Miami fan. But if you lived in that Panhandle area or in the Big Bend area, Tallahassee, you knew who he was.
Yeah, that is well said, as always. Larry Blustein. You want to follow him on Twitter at Larry Blustein. Blue does the South Florida High School Sports Show on Mondays. He's also part of the Six Ring Show. What's your next show coming up? I know you just had the South Florida High School Show on Monday. Do you have a Six Ring coming up? And then are you back on next Monday?
Yeah, we just did all Six Ring last night. Instead of Monday this week. And we broke down a lot of the guys that you and I were just talking about too, on that. And then, Monday right now we're having a lot of athlete players on. We check in, like I said, with all the colleges around the state. We had a very interesting guest this week, a head coach of Valdosta State University. This is a program that may be a little bit smaller, but they have 59 kids from the state of Florida. It's amazing. And a lot of them were kids who were really, really good. So we talked a little bit with Coach Jackson about that. Plus, we have players on. We've had Vince Shavers on and talked to Vince. And try to get a Miami person on every week, whether it's an analyst like yourself or a player. It's really it's a show that kind of runs the gamut. It's, it's not one of those shows that you're pigeonholed in. And if you don't like this, then you don't listen to it. But there's 7 different segments. So people will find something that they want to listen to.
It really is a great show, so you guys should check it out. Make sure you support Larry Bluestein's work. And guys, we'll talk to you again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.